everyone. My name is Mandira. Welcome to AglaSem, and today we are going to be doing Class 11, Chapter 8, Thinking. So in this chapter, we'll basically learn to describe the nature of thinking and reasoning. Reasoning is basically providing reason for something. Then we will try to understand the cognitive processes involved in problem solving and decision making, understand the relationship between language and thought, and the nature and process of creative thinking. So this is just a snapshot of the chapter that we're going to be doing. Now let's get on with our chapter number 8, Thinking. Heading number 1, Nature of Thinking. So, जब भी हम thinking की बात करते हैं, we always think that it is an internal process. That, okay, it is something that's going on inside my head, and some people say, this is a very commonly used term, that a lot of people say that I'm an overthinker. It means that a lot of thoughts tend to come to my mind, right? And sometimes those thoughts are not as favorable as the other ones. So, even in everyday life, we use a lot of terminology related to thinking. We do a lot of thinking. चाहे वो हम consciously we are thinking something, or unconsciously we don't know that we are thinking, but we are thinking about something. So all these are the different kinds of thinkings that we do in everyday life. So let's start off with the definition. And here it says that it is the base of all cognitive activities, right? It is the starting point of all cognitive activities, because unless a thought comes to your mind, you will not be able to manipulate it, you will not be able to process it, you don't know what it means, you won't be able to do any kind of action. कि भाई thought आएगा तभी, you can interpret it, manipulate it, and then do any kind of action. Okay, so as I was saying, let's get on to the definition. Thinking is a higher mental process through which we manipulate and analyze the acquired or existing information. Such manipulation and analysis occur by means of abstracting, reasoning, imagining, problem solving, judging, and decision making. So this is throwing a lot of terms at you. Don't get worried, because we are going to be doing each and every term in singularity on its own during this chapter. So basically it says that it is a higher mental process. Although it is at the base of the thinking process, it is a higher mental process. Matlab, it is something that only developed beings can do. Okay. So for example, if you think that, if you look at amoeba, or for that matter, if you look at any kind of fish, if you look at mammals like, for instance, elephants, yeah, then if you look at the human mind, these are 4 different categories of thinking that each organism is going to be doing. Amoeba probably doesn't have that kind of developed sort of structure that it can actually give a thought about a lot of things, because it is a unicellular organism. And similarly, as we move on, elephants mein jo hoti hai, they have a bit of thoda unme higher mental processes ki capacity hoti hai. Dogs have although less than elephants, but they do have a lot of mental capacity. And then obviously we come to the human mind. Fish, as I was saying, ki fish may probably not that much, because it is a lower animal. And end may we come to the human mind, which is the most complex and is capable of doing a lot of higher level thinking, right? हम लोग mathematics कर सकते हैं, judgment कर सकते हैं. Look at all the kind of inventions that mankind has made, right? From inventing an airplane to driving it to probably playing the tabla that people like Zakir Hussain do. The way we have evolved, the way thinking processes have evolved, it's actually something only higher organisms can do, like human beings. Okay, so thinking is mostly organized and goal directed. Organized matlab, it's not that a random collection of objects and words is coming into your head. You are actually giving something a thought in an organized way. So for example, if you want to get up in the morning and in the morning you feel like eating pasta for breakfast, right? So you know that, okay, agar mujhe pasta khane ka man kare, then I'll go and boil it, or probably I'll go and purchase it from the market and I'll boil it, and then I put all the sauces in it, I'll cook the sauce, and then I'll mix it together and I'll eat it. So it is a very organized process. It's not haphazard, right? And it is goal directed again. So because you want to eat pasta, you will think that, okay, what are the steps involved in cooking pasta? What are the steps involved to achieve my goal of eating pasta? So it is goal directed. Okay. And it is an internal mental process which can be inferred from overt behavior. For example, if I see someone going and buying pasta, I can probably assume that he or she is going to be eating it anytime soon. Okay. Or if I see someone watching the recipe of cooking the sauce for pasta, then again, इसका मतलब यही है that that person wants to cook it and eat it. So from overt behavior, visible behavior, say, we can kind of infer what the person is thinking. Okay. Okay, now let's come to the next subheading, which is building blocks of thought. मतलब कि जो हमारी थिंकिंग है बेसिकली व्हाट इट इज मेड अप ऑफ. सो जस्ट लाइक इफ यू प्लेड Lego when you were young, I used to play a lot of Lego. It is like those building blocks where you can combine a lot of blocks together in order to form any kind of coherent structure, in order to form a building or cars. So they are just talking, that is the similarity between इसी तरीके के building thoughts के बारे में यहाँ पे बात हो रही है, ठीक है, just like Lego. So basically इसमें क्या है that the first thing we do when we're trying to think about something is create a visual representation, okay? And when we want to read a storybook of our choice, it would depend on the knowledge about different authors. So it is kind of saying कि कई जगह पर हम visual representation से काम चलाते हैं और कई जगह पर हमारी knowledge काम आती है. So a good example given here is कि visual representation में क्या होगा, if you want to go somewhere, कि यहाँ से left, वहाँ से right. If you want to describe someone the direction to your house, then that would involve visual representation. On the other hand, if you want to find a book in the library, then that requires the knowledge कि author क्या है and what is the name of the book, and according to that you can go into the correct section and fetch a book. Okay. So again हम लोग first इसमें बात करते हैं, वो जो visual representations की बात हो रही थी, let's talk about mental images. Okay. So this is a good example. So in a lot of therapies, मतलब हमें ये I was told this in I think postgrad. In a lot of therapies, they tell you that if a negative thought is coming to your mind, just don't think about it. I mean, it's not professional therapy, but it's obviously a lot of people tell you to do this. कि अगर आपके दिमाग में negative thoughts आ रहे हैं, आप ना वहाँ पे अपने दिमाग को जाने मत दो. Don't think about it. ठीक है. So our professor was trying to demonstrate what kind of how mental images are formed in our head, and that's why he said, now I want you all to not think about a chocolate cake. And everybody instantly started thinking about the chocolate cake. So basically he was trying to explain कि how some therapies are flawed in the sense, या फिर कुछ advice जो दूसरे लोग देते हैं, that is flawed in the sense that if you tell someone not to think about something, that is like literally the only thing they will think about. So obviously as soon as I also must have said कि don't think about a chocolate cake, a picture of a chocolate cake would have come to your mind. ठीक है ना? So that is a mental image of a chocolate cake that is coming to your mind. So image क्या होता है? It is a mental representation of a sensory experience. It can be used to think about things, places and events. Things, places, events. इसमें human beings are not really, although mental images human beings के लिए भी बन सकती हैं, but these are mostly about non-living things. ठीक है? So जैसे cake, I said कि chocolate cake, तो you will form a mental image of a chocolate cake. Or if I say Maggie, you will think, I talk a lot about food. So if you if I say Maggie, you will think about the mental image of a Maggie, and that can also affect your behavior to the extent that maybe you feel like eating Maggie after watching this video. So the next subtopic we are going to talk about after mental images, concepts, जो दूसरी वाली thinking में use होता है. ये तो visual representation वाली thinking होगी हमारी, ठीक है? So whenever we come across an object or event, familiar or unfamiliar, we try to identify the object or event by extracting its characteristics, matching it with an already existing category of objects and events. So for example, someone tells you, the other day I was ordering some food and someone told me you must try green apple juice. So I was like, okay, what is that? I didn't know what it was. So I said, okay, maybe the already existing category of apple juice was in my head, right? So उसने जब बोला green apple, so I was like, okay, fine, a green apple, something just like an apple, and उसका भी juice निकल सकता है, so that is a green apple juice. So that is already existing categories के through you are trying to build up new information, a new concept, and putting it into the correct category. ठीक है? For example, इसमें अच्छा example दिया है कि when we see a dog, we categorize it as an animal. Okay, so when I saw green apple juice, I categorized it as a juice or apple juice. Okay, that was the bigger category that already existed in my mind. Now, why do we need to form concepts? Concept formation helps us in organizing our knowledge so that whenever we need to access our knowledge, we can do it with less time and effort. Okay, so I think in the previous chapter we did about memory. उसमें एक concept था of cognitive economy, right? Page number 140 पे, if you want to refer. So cognitive economy का जो concept है वो यहीं पे applied है. That concepts क्यों exist करते हैं? They exist because we don't want to go through the same drill again and again कि अगर किसी ने मुझे green apple juice बोला so I should first see कि अच्छा ये कौन से is it living non living, अच्छा non living में क्या है, which category is it's fruit, अच्छा fruit में क्या है. So ये जो organization है ना, it actually helps us a lot in sort of identifying something कि when someone tells me green apple for example, juice को भी side रख देते हैं, तो ग्रीन एप्पल भले ही हो सकता है मैंने कभी नहीं देखा हो या फिर मैंने कभी खाया नहीं हो, बट जस्ट बाय द नेम आई नो दैट इट्स गोइंग टू बी स्वीट, इट्स गोइंग टू प्रॉब्ली टेस्ट समवॉट लाइक एन एप्पल. तो बिकॉज द कैटेगरी ऑफ एप्पल ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्ट्स इन माय माइंड, दैट्स व्हाई आई वाज एबल टू मैनिपुलेट इट. ठीक है ना. तो इस तरीके से हमारा कॉन्सेप्ट फॉर्मेशन होता है एंड इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज हमारे पास इतना टाइम नहीं है कि हर चीज को हम एज अ न्यू आइटम रजिस्टर करें. ठीक है कि अच्छा ये क्या होता है, ग्रीन एप्पल होता है. ग्रीन एप्पल का मैं पहले स्ट्रक्चर देखूं, फिर फंक्शन देखूं, फिर ये देखूं कि ग्रीन एप्पल बोल के देखूं, सिमेंटिकली उसका मतलब निकालूं दैट दिस इज प्रॉब्ली अ फ्रूट. इतना टाइम टू रजिस्टर न्यू थिंग्स इन आवर लाइफ वी डोंट हैव एंड neither do we have that kind of mental capacity. So that's why concepts really are shortcuts that help save us time. ठीक है. So for example अब आ जाते हैं हम नेक्स्ट उस पे कि कॉन्सेप्ट किस किस टाइप के होते हैं. दे फॉल इनटू हायरार्कीज इन द लेवल्स ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग. ठीक है. लेवल ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग के अकॉर्डिंग आपका कॉन्सेप्ट बिल्ड होता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल द हाइस्ट लेवल इज सुपरऑर्डिनेट लेवल. ठीक है. द बेसिक लेवल इज इंटरमीडिएट लेवल एंड सबऑर्डिनेट इज द लोएस्ट लेवल. ठीक है. व्हाइल स्पीकिंग, तो फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर आपने डॉग देखा तो जो डॉग है दैट इज लाइक अ वेरी basic kind of category. I saw you are more likely to, so there is a really good example given in NCERT on page number 152 that says when a person says I saw a dog, a basic level is used. Such a statement is more likely to be made than I saw a four-legged animal that barks and wags its tail, or an animal. Right? Because you know the name of the animal is dog. The first is the subordinate, is far too specific than needed for the conversation. So subordinate category कौन सी हुई? I saw a four-legged animal that barks and wags its tails. That's very specific. You don't need that kind of information every time, right? So the second one, that was dog. Oh, the second one, like so the medium one was intermediate level, that was dog, and the highest level was animal. So animal में you need further explanation. कौन सा animal? How many legs did they have? That kind of explanation is needed. So ना animal हम generally use करेंगे that I saw an animal. If you see a dog, neither will you say that I saw a four-legged animal that barks and wags its tail. What you're most likely to say is the intermediate category, that is I saw a dog. ठीक है. Now अब जैसे dog I say, so a lot of people, वैसे there are a lot of breeds of dogs, but when I say typically dog, probably a lot of you will associate it with a Labrador or with a Golden Retriever because I think they are advertised the most. So यही next concept हमारा इसी से related है that whenever we say apple, for example, if I say imagine an apple in your head. अच्छा अब मैंने green apple के बारे में बहुत सारी बातें कर दी हैं, so maybe you will imagine a green apple. But if I say कि imagine an apple, you will most likely imagine a red apple in your head, right? So because this kind of activity जो हमारी हो रही है, जो एक typical example हम apple का imagine कर रहे हैं, that is called a prototype of an apple. ठीक है. जैसे the other day I was I think out in the market and someone told me that they actually invented this kind of thing that's called soup mug. Okay, उसमें क्या होता है, the mug is very round, it is actually like a bowl only and the bowl just has a handle attached to it, so you can like hold it in your hand and have soup with the help of a soup spoon. ठीक है. So for me that was like, oh, it's not a cup because it's too round, although ऐसे cups भी exist कर सकते हैं, but for me the prototype of a cup is just like the one that's given in figure 8.3, the fifth one. So a small and a very oval kind of shape, और मुझे लगा कि वो ये cup होता है. So whenever we imagine the typical example of any kind of category, that's called the prototype. लेकिन इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि और exist नहीं कर सकते. So जैसे कि I told you that soup mug does exist, right? पतले पतले mugs भी exist करते हैं. Funnel like mugs also exist, and that's fine. But when someone says mug or when someone says cup, that category that pops into my head is a very typical example. ठीक है. So a prototype is the best representative member of the category. Eleanor Roche argues that it is considered how people think about concepts. Prototypes are often involved in real life. ठीक है. So most typical item जो आपका उस category का होगा, that is, अच्छा जैसे for example, another example of a prototype is, I hope you have really understood this, but third example भी दे देती हूँ, जिसमें when someone tells you to draw scenery, right? we as kids, that one little tree and that that river coming out and that little cottage on the side and then clouds and sun, ये एक prototypical scenery हम लोगों को पता है, because we have been taught this since we were kids, right? So all those sceneries of different kinds exist in this universe, but for us the prototype of a scenery is that only. ठीक है, scenery का drawing. So similar examples of chairs and cups जैसे मैंने आपको explain किया, those are given. ठीक है, so that is the concept of a prototype. Now let's begin our next main heading, which is the process of thinking. अब तो हमने ये सोच लिया कि what kind of different concepts are involved in thinking. कि mental image है, concepts हैं, and then there is this prototype का concept also. ठीक है, so ये छोटी छोटी चीजें हैं जो thinking से related है, but now we will get on to how thinking happens. कैसे होता है, what is the mechanism of thinking. ठीक है, so आ जाते हैं मेन हेडिंग प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग पे. ठीक है, ये आपने बहुत बार सुना होगा दैट पीएसए हमारे व्हेन आई वाज इन स्कूल वी हैड अ लॉट ऑफ पीएसए एक्टिविटीज आल्सो, प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग एक्टिविटीज, एंड वी वर असेस्ड ऑन इट बिकॉज दे वांटेड टू नो दैट हाउ मच प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग कैपेसिटी अ किड हैज. तो प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग क्या होती है? इट इज थिंकिंग दैट इज गोल डायरेक्टेड. अब हमने जब थिंकिंग को डिफाइन किया था, वी सेड यूजुअली थिंकिंग इज गोल डायरेक्टेड एंड यूजुअली इट इज ऑर्गेनाइज्ड ऑल्सो. लेकिन अनऑर्गेनाइज्ड थिंकिंग भी एग्जिस्ट करती है और thinking without a goal also exists. ठीक है, for example, thinking without a goal is when sometimes I am on a I am counting my calories and I'm like, नहीं, I won't eat junk food. I am on a clean diet. I'll always Instagram pictures of crazy junk food, like उसमें cheese है, उसमें Maggie है. I just look at those pictures and I'm just like, okay, now my craving is sort of fulfilled and I'm not going to do anything about it. So I was thinking about junk food without any purpose. Although you can say that the purpose was solving the craving, but the purpose will never become behavior. Okay, it's not that I will actually go and eat that junk food, but just by thinking about it, just by looking at the pictures of it, it becomes like it satisfies me. So that is kind of an example of a thinking that you're doing without any goal. ठीक है, so but when you know that thinking for sure has a goal, it is called problem solving. ठीक है, goal directed thinking. So for example, it could be a simple activity you perform to reach a defined goal. For example, preparing a quick snack for your friend who has just arrived at your place. In problem solving, there is an initial stage, that is the problem, and then there is an end stage, that is the goal. The two anchors are connected by the means of several steps or mental operations. This is very similar to the pasta making example I gave you. That you woke up in the morning and you thought that today I feel like eating pasta. So that has a lot of steps. First, आपको check करना है घर में pasta है या नहीं. If it is there, then that's great. But if it's not there, then you need to go to the market and get it. And कौन से brand का लेना है, that is another question. ठीक है. You need to get all the ingredients you need to prepare sauce for pasta. उसके बाद आपको आके घर पे रेसिपी देखनी है that what kind of what's the procedure. Then you have to follow those steps and make the pasta, and then you'll be able to reach your goal of eating the pasta. So this is sort of problem क्या थी? You want to eat pasta, and end क्या था? You ate pasta. ठीक है. So इन दोनों के बीच में there were a lot of mental operations or steps that were involved. ठीक है, अब आ जाते हैं obstacles to solving problems पे. अब इतना इजी तो प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग नहीं होता है ना. ऑब्वियसली देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ चैलेंजेस टू प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग, तभी इट इज अ प्रॉब्लम. अदरवाइज दुनिया की सारी प्रॉब्लम्स तो खत्म ही हो गई होती, सब सॉल्व हो गई. इतने सालों से हम हैं यहाँ पे, बट दे स्टिल एग्जिस्ट बिकॉज देयर आर लॉट ऑफ चैलेंजेस टू प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग. ओके, फर्स्ट चैलेंज वी आर गोइंग टू डू इज द मेंटल सेट. दिस इज डिफरेंट फ्रॉम मेंटल इमेज, डोंट कंफ्यूज इट विद दैट. मेंटल सेट क्या होता है? इट इज अ टेंडेंसी ऑफ अ पर्सन टू सॉल्व प्रॉब्लम्स बाय फॉलोइंग already tried mental operations or steps. So prior success से क्या होगा? आपका अगर पहला आपने कोई प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करने की कोशिश करी और उसमें आप सक्सेसफुली उसको सॉल्व कर पाए, you will try to apply a similar kind of experience in doing another problem also. अब जैसे टिपिकल एग्जाम्पल इज कि नोट्स बना के यू कैन स्कोर वेल इन साइकोलॉजी. ठीक है, बट नोट्स बना के you cannot score well in mathematics, right? Because it is a very numerical subject. So you have to actually do a lot of questions. You have to do exercises. आपको सारी वो करनी पड़ेंगी different kind of questions से, तब जाके आपकी mental flexibility आएगी and you will be able to do newer questions also. ठीक है, तो the strategy that you followed in preparing for your psychology exam, which was actually successful because you were able to perform well, maybe that won't be applicable in the mathematics exam. So because you are using the same kind of strategy in your mathematics exam as well, दैट्स वाई देर इज दैट काइंड ऑफ मेंटल सेट का प्रॉब्लम. ठीक है, कि पहले मैंने ये किया था एंड आई वाज सक्सेसफुल इन डूइंग दिस, सो नेक्स्ट टाइम भी आई विल डू दिस एंड आई विल ट्राई टू बी सक्सेसफुल इन अ सिमिलर वे. बट दैट एक्चुअली डजंट हैपन बिकॉज द नेचर ऑफ द थिंग दैट यू आर डूइंग नेक्स्ट इज नॉट द सेम. तो दिस इज अ वेरी कॉम्प्लेक्स एग्जाम्पल. एक सिंपल एग्जाम्पल मैं आपको देती हूँ. The other day it happened with me also that I for some reason blanked out and did not know that Ruabza bottles have started coming in plastic. Okay, I thought that it was coming in the glass bottle, because when I was younger they used to come in glass bottles. So I held it very tightly and I started मैंने बहुत जोर से pressure लगा के I started opening the bottle. ठीक है, and it kind of splashed on the surface and obviously I got a yelling from my mom. But this is an example of a mental set because I had done this with a glass bottle where I have to hold it really firmly to unscrew or like just open the lid. इस वजह से I thought कि ये मुझे लगा कि वो glass bottle है, so plastic में भी मैंने खूब सारा pressure लगा दिया and it sort of got all over the place. ठीक है, so this is an example of a mental set. I was not able to think creatively. I was not able to adapt to the new problem in hand because I had already successfully opened the glass bottle before. ठीक है, so like mental set. Functional fixedness in problem solving occurs when people fail to solve a problem because they are fixed on the thing's usual function, right? So if you have used a hard so functional fixedness क्या होती है कि if this is a pen, it can only be used as a pen. ठीक है, but see, we can use it to play pen fight, we can use it to sort of scratch, we can use it, don't do that but yeah, we can use it, right? So या फिर अगर एक आपके पास there is a pillow, you can only use it for sleeping, but no, you can आप pillow को कभी अपने back को rest देने के लिए भी, बैठे बैठे भी I use a lot of pillows, या फिर you can throw it on someone, that's also a great idea. So you have overcome functional fixedness if you have thrown a pillow at somebody, because you know that the pillow's objective is not just for me to put my head on it and sleep. I can use it for different things. ठीक है, so then the second problem that obstacle to problem solving is lack of motivation. This is the very important one, because if you're not motivated enough to solve a particular problem, obviously it won't be solved. Now, why will you not be motivated enough to solve a problem? Because we're all great people. But this used to happen a lot with me in maths, because if you are trying to do a question and आधे question में it's a very long question, half the question through you are like, oh okay, now I don't know what is happening and I will try it on later, I just don't want to do it right now because it is exhausted all my energy even halfway through. So you will leave that question and you will move on to something else. So it means you are not motivated enough to do that question because of whatever reason. ठीक है, चाहे वो internally you don't like maths or because the question was difficult, whatever the reason was. Lack of motivation can occur through internal and external causes. ठीक है, next we come to the next main heading, which is that of reasoning. Thinking क्या होती है? Thinking is just mental process, higher mental process. But reasoning क्या होती है? Reasoning is providing the reason for why something occurred. ठीक है, इसमें एक example given है that a person is running on the on a railway platform and is trying to catch a train. So what you can look at, मतलब जब आप उस बंदे को देखोगे that he is running, you can probably see that he is late. ठीक है, या फिर he probably was getting off the train, but something was there that he left inside, so he's quickly going to fetch it and jump outside of the train. कुछ भी हो सकता है. So you are trying to provide logical reasons about why that person is running behind the train. ठीक है, deductive and inductive reasoning पे आ जाते हैं. There are two types of reasonings. ठीक है, एक होती है deductive और एक होती है inductive. Deductive reasoning begins with making a general assumption that you know or believe to be true and then drawing a specific conclusion based on this assumption. Okay, so आप ऐसा समझ लो that it is basically a category जो आपको पता है, an overarching category that you know कि इस पे चीजें exist करती हैं और उसके अंदर कोई चीज आ गई, so you sort of जैसे कि मैंने वो किया था ग्रीन एप्पल क्या होता है वाला जो एग्जाम्पल है, दैट इज डिडक्टिव रीजनिंग. बिकॉज आई नो दैट एप्पल इज द लार्जर कैटेगरी. आई नो कि ये एक जनरल रूल है अबाउट एप्पल्स. दैट्स व्हाई आई डिड्यूस्ड कि रेड एप्पल मीठा होता है तो ग्रीन एप्पल भी मीठा ही होगा. बोथ ऑफ देम वुड हैव द प्रॉपर्टी ऑफ बीइंग स्वीट. दिस इज डिडक्टिव रीजनिंग. ठीक है, बट deductive reasoning is good because I already know that apples are sweet, apples are basically look a certain way. That's great. But if my assumptions about apples are wrong, ठीक है, तो मेरी जो जजमेंट उससे जो मेरी वो है डिडक्शन है वो भी रॉन्ग हो जाएगी. ठीक है, तो फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर मैंने ऑल एप्पल्स आर स्वीट अज्यूम कर रखा है, ठीक है, बट आई एम प्रेजेंटेड विद अ ग्रीन एप्पल विच इज एक्चुअली रियली सावर, देन I will be like, okay, maybe this is not an apple because it does not taste like a typical apple. तो डिडक्टिव रीजनिंग में ना ये प्रॉब्लम होती है दैट अगर आपकी अजम्पशन ही गलत है, जनरल अजम्पशन, तो आपका डिडक्शन या स्पेसिफिक कंक्लूजन भी गलत ही होगा, ठीक है. सो अगेन दैट you assume that you know the basic statement and assumption is true, but you know if the base information is not true, people, you know, for example platform wale example pe people also run on the platform for other reasons, your conclusion might be invalid or wrong, theek hai. Another way to figure out why the man is running on the platform or any kind of problem we have in life is inductive reasoning, ठीक है. इंडक्टिव रीजनिंग क्या होती है, बहुत पर्टिकुलर सारे मतलब एक कलेक्शन ऑफ आपने वो करे हैं ऑब्जर्वेशंस, ठीक है, उन सारे कलेक्शन ऑफ ऑब्जर्वेशन से आप एक जनरल रूल निकालोगे. सो ऑल साइंटिफिक रीजनिंग इज इंडक्टिव, ठीक है. मोस्ट आई मीन स्पेशली इन अ टिपिकल एक्सपेरिमेंट, क्योंकि टिपिकल एक्सपेरिमेंट में हमें क्या किया, 200 का सैंपल साइज ले लिया, 200 पीपल वी आर डूइंग द सेम एक्सपेरिमेंट एंड वी आर ट्राइंग टू रिड्यूस अ जनरल रूल. सो जैसे 200 लोग परफॉर्म करेंगे, वी आर ट्राइंग टू जनरलाइज इट टू द rest of the population. So this is inductive reasoning. Small samples say specific conclusions say you want to make a general rule. If 200 people, while driving, they are distracted by a certain kind of stimuli, then it is very likely that a lot more people will be. Or we are trying to make a basic rule कि अगर ये है तो 90% लोग और 100% लोग will be distracted by this stimulus. So this is the scientific reasoning जो हम करते हैं. Then there is analogy, ठीक है. Analogy क्या होता है? It is another form of reasoning which involves 4 parts. A is to B as C is to D. मैंने ये टर्म ना पहले भी पढ़ाने में भी यूज किया and I apologize for that because मैंने explain नहीं किया. In case you guys didn't know, analogy होती है comparison and it is a very accurate comparison, ठीक है. Sorry. For example, इसमें example is given, water is to fish as air is to human. मतलब because water is essential for the survival of a fish, air is essential for the survival of human beings. White is to snow as dash is to coal. तो we know that the answer is black because snow जो होती है वो white होती है और जो coal होता है वो black होता है, ठीक है. मतलब basically similar comparisons draw करना, analogous comparisons. Next we come to the next main heading, that is that of decision making, ठीक है. अच्छा, inductive and deductive reasons allow us to make judgments. आपने टर्म पहले भी सुनी होगी that don't judge people. Well, scientifically speaking, it is different, and in daily life we need to make judgments of a lot of objects that are near to us. ठीक है. तो although we should not judge people and their decisions, we should definitely judge the objects around us because they might be beneficial or harmful. ठीक है. Judgment क्या होता है? We draw conclusions, form opinions, evaluate events, objects based on knowledge available and the available evidences. ठीक है. हम लोग conclusions भी draw करेंगे, opinions भी form करेंगे और events और objects को evaluate भी करते हैं, ठीक है, based on the knowledge we have and whatever the evidence is available. So, for example, इसमें there is a good example that someone is very talkative, likes to mix with people, and he can convince others very easily. Then you know that the job for that person is a salesperson job. ठीक है. So sometimes judgments are automatic and require no conscious effort by the person and occur as a matter of habit. ठीक है. Don't worry. ऐसा सबके साथ होता है that sometimes you look at a person and you're like, yeah, this guy is going to be really really rude, okay? But then turns out when you talk to them that person is actually a nice person. ठीक है. So you can change your judgment. तो snap judgment जिसको हम कहते हैं ना, फटाक से judgment ले लेना that 2 minutes I interacted with someone or just by looking at someone, you can judge them. Like I've heard this thing called face reading. So face reading में I mean as far as I know they don't really interact with people. वो face को ही पढ़ के बता देते हैं या handwriting को ही पढ़ के बता देते हैं that this is the person और उसकी ये वाली qualities होंगी and they might be very accurate to a certain extent. But the thing is, when you are reading someone's face without talking to them, it's probably the work of a snap judgment, right? You are not, and even if you are drawing certain kind of conclusions on the basis of the shape of the nose or their eyes, it's probably not going to be as accurate as when you actually have a conversation with them. ठीक है. So judge हम बहुत करते हैं, that's our favorite thing to do, but we should refrain from judging in a very snap manner and especially negatively अगर हम किसी को judge कर रहे हैं. So snap manner में यही वाली judgments होती हैं कि हमने किसी चीज को देखा and good or bad feeling, एंड जो एक कॉन्शियस जजमेंट होती है, दैट इज जजिंग द ब्यूटी ऑफ अ पेंटिंग, obviously, because you need to appreciate the little aspects of a painting and give it a lot of conscious thought. ठीक है, that is not a snap judgment, that is a conscious judgment. या ये जज करना कि whether psychology is a good profession for me or not according to my own traits. ठीक है, so that is a conscious decision. आपको अपने aptitude देखना है, आपको अपने interests देखने हैं, whether you like interacting with other people or not. ठीक है ना, according to that you can make a judgment about whether psychology as a profession is good fit for you या नहीं. ठीक है. Now, in decision making, हम लोग क्या करते हैं? We sometimes choose among options based on choices of personal significance. Judgment and decision making are interrelated processes. ठीक है? तो decision making में we are choosing among the options and we already have all the information that is required to us. Decision making is different from problem solving because in decision making we already know the various solutions or choices one has to be selected. For example, the example is given here that one has to select between a badminton match and a final examination. For example, pre-board examination. So you have to select. You know कि दोनों choices से क्या impact होगा आपकी life पे, and you have to make a conscious decision about the choices. And it's not a problem because आपको both, you know the solutions to both. ठीक है, solution ये है कि you have to pick one, and badminton में ये advantages हैं, you have to think about it, disadvantage versus final exam देने में psychology का for example ये advantage ये disadvantage, आपको बस एक choice make करनी है. ठीक है, तो that is where it is different from problem solving behaviors. So here about we come to almost half the length of the chapter. And soon we are going to be starting with the next heading, that is nature and process of creative thinking. Next type of thinking pattern, that is creative thinking. So creative thinking ki what is the definition? It refers to originality and uniqueness of ideas or solutions that did not previously exist. It is also generally characterized by what Bruner calls effective surprise. ठीक है, तो आपने बहुत बार ये टर्म सुनी होगी अपनी लाइफ में भी, that person is a very creative thinker. ठीक है, he is very creative about his ideas. अच्छा, दो टाइप की creativity हो सकती है. Everyday creativity is reflected in one's way of perceiving and thinking of problem solving. ठीक है, that is different from special talent creativity. For example, someone can sing or draw amazing they have amazing talents. Like in that way, if it is related to talent, then it is called special talent creativity. और एवरीडे क्रिएटिविटी होती है जो रोज की चीजों में आप क्रिएटिविटी कर सकते हो. ठीक है, सो इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू रिमेंबर दैट क्रिएटिव थिंकिंग इज नॉट ऑलवेज एक्सप्रेस्ड इन एक्स्ट्राऑर्डिनरी वर्क. वन डज नॉट हैव टू बी अ साइंटिस्ट और एन आर्टिस्ट टू बी अ क्रिएटिव थिंकर. आई हैव अ लॉट ऑफ होम मेकर्स हु आर माई रिलेटिव्स एंड दे आर द मोस्ट क्रिएटिव इन सॉर्ट ऑफ उनकी जो थिंकिंग है दैट इज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट क्रिएटिव आई हैव एवर सीन. सो they are not scientists or artists or any kind of this, but for example my mommy, she is very मतलब वो किसी भी waste material की चीज से किसी भी कुछ भी बना देती है. So the other day I think I think we ordered a bunch of plastic bottles, and because we were having some sort of beverages, I think we were having Pepsi or something, and हमने ना 3-4 bottles मंगाई हुई थी. So we drank it, and then obviously as usual either you throw it in the recycle bin so that the plastic can be recycled, or you just throw it in the regular bin. So we made a recycle bin उसका. So next time I went to their house, I actually found that she had cut the top of all those plastic bottles, और उन्होंने उसके अंदर she had put a lot of mud and manure, और उससे she had grown a little home based garden. So उसमें different kinds of, एक में शायद उन्होंने she grew lemon, and the other one she grew some sort of flower. So all the 4 bottles that we had used for drinking, she made little home based gardens from those bottles. So that I think is a very creative task to do, and it is also very earth friendly. It is very it is very green friendly also. So this is an example of I was giving you. You don't need to be a scientist or an artist to be a creative thinker. If you are creative, you can even see creativity in a regular Pepsi bottle that at least I could not do that at that point. ठीक है, so I'm sure you also must know a lot of examples in your home. Your mom or your dad, any kind of your relatives must be really creative. So अभी इसमें ओरिजिनलिटी होती है और यूनिकनेस ऑफ आइडियाज होते हैं. ओरिजिनलिटी मतलब शायद हमने उनका ओरिजिनल आइडिया है कि अच्छा मे बी कि नाउ आई एम जस्ट लिविंग इन अ बबल एंड एवरीवन डज दैट इन देयर होम बेस्ड गार्डन्स, बट according to me it was a pretty regular idea. ठीक है, I mean it was a very pretty original idea, and it's also very unique because most people use bottles for drinking. ठीक है, hardly anyone will use it for gardening purpose. ठीक है, so it's actually pretty great according to me. It's creative thinking. तो it is an effective surprise also. ठीक है, so इसमें नेचर ऑफ क्रिएटिव थिंकिंग का हमारा थोड़ा सा पार्ट कवर हो जाता है. ठीक है, नाउ उसमें एक सेकंड पार्ट जो हमारा है, इट इज नॉट ऑल्दो इट्स नॉट अ हेडिंग, बट एक सेकंड पार्ट हम अभी शुरू करेंगे आफ्टर द लास्ट टॉपिक. सो रिसर्चर्स टेंड टू एग्री दैट थिंकिंग इज सेड टू बी क्रिएटिव व्हेन इट इज रियलिटी ओरिएंटेड, appropriate, constructive and socially desirable. Reality oriented मतलब something that is actually fitting into the real world, not just कि abstract thinking कर रहे हो आप. ठीक है, it has to be practical. Appropriate है, of course, it's not in bad taste. Constructive when it's actually making good use of your time, making good use of the resources around you, which is definitely this one. And socially desirable. We all love a cute little garden on our terrace or a little bit on our bedrooms also sometimes. So it is socially desirable process. ठीक है. अच्छा, next I was saying that we come to two types of thinking that is discussed here. In creative thinking के अंदर ही ये discussed है. ठीक है. It is called convergent and divergent thinking. Convergent thinking क्या होती है? It refers to thinking that is required to solve problems which only have one correct answer. For example, 3, 6, 9. आगे क्या आएगा? You know that the answer is going to be 12. या फिर एक these kind of logical patterns से जो thinking solve हो जाती है या जिसका एक ही correct answer होता है. So, for example, I have a friend who is amazing at numbers. You give him any kind of pattern, you give him in numbers, आप उसको कोई भी pattern दे दो, he is able to solve it in a minute and he'll do it like, आप उसको cube root दे दो, आप उसको कुछ भी दे दो, he will immediately learn the pattern and he will tell you the next number. That is an example of convergent thinking because his answer will either be correct or incorrect, which always, by the way, is correct. So, convergent thinking में that means he is very high on convergent thinking. ठीक है. On the other hand, divergent thinking जो होती है, that is more of open-ended questions, जिनका एक, there is not one fixed answer. For example, how to save energy, या फिर how to make our planet more sustainable. ठीक है, someone will suggest a plant-based diet. कि if you practice that, then that will be good. Someone will say कि आप vehicular pollution कम करने की कोशिश करो. Someone will say industrial pollution बहुत ज्यादा है, उसको कम करने की कोशिश करो. Someone might say don't burst crackers. ठीक है, so these are all, ये सारे के सारे these are correct answers for decreasing pollution, making our planet more sustainable. But these are all different. ठीक है, तो जब multiple answers हैं और सारे answers correct भी हो सकते हैं, then that is an example of divergent thinking. तो जब हम creative thinking की बात करते हैं, then definitely divergent thinking जो है, that will be someone who is very high on divergent thinking, who's thinks very diversely, will actually be more creative than someone who is more higher on convergent thinking. ठीक है. तो divergent thinking abilities generally include fluency, flexibility, originality and elaboration. ठीक है, तो अब आते हैं हम divergent thinking की थोड़ी थोड़ी properties पे. तो fluency क्या होती है? The ability to produce many ideas for a given task or problem. जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि how to make earth more sustainable, all the set of answers that I presented. Flexibility indicates a variety in thinking. It may be thinking of different uses of an object or different interpretation of a picture, story, different ways of solving a problem. ठीक है. So again, as I said, because my mommy used those little bottles to create a garden, that would be an example of flexibility. Bottle has a use other than being a bottle and storing liquids in it. ठीक है. तो originality क्या होती है? It is the ability to produce ideas that are rare or unusual by seeing new relationships, combining old ideas with new ones, and looking at things from a different perspective. ठीक है. For example, I was in class once and we were watching a video of a person. He was seeking therapy from a professional psychologist. So our professor told us to make observations. So I remember one of my classmates, he made an observation. So the person who was in the video, जो अपनी complaints psychologist को सुना रहा था, he kept laughing in the middle. ठीक है, although we knew that he was visibly stressed, बहुत उसको anxiety का ही problem था. So he made a very astute observation that sometimes when people are laughing, they are laughing to sort of cover up for their anxiety. And when he made this observation, we were like, great man, because we did not see it through that perspective. We were actually confused that, why is he laughing in between? कोई और disorder तो नहीं है, कुछ तो नहीं है. But he made this observation and that was very, it was from a very different perspective. It was very original observation that nobody had made before. So that's great. Okay, that's an example. Elaboration क्या होता है? It's the ability that enables a person to go into details and work out the implication of new ideas. Actually implementing sort of. एक action plan बनाना. It is not हवा में idea. You actually have to make a elaborate plan. ठीक है? Divergent thinking abilities facilitate a variety of ideas which may not seem related. ठीक है? So इसी का invention जो एक word आता है, that is only this is exactly the process through which an invention takes place. किसी चीज को आपने देखा, कोई प्रॉब्लम है, उसको आप fluently, flexibly, originally और elaboratively solve करते हो, then it becomes an invention. Now we come to the next topic, which is process of creative thinking. So कैसे होता है? What are the steps involved in creative thinking? The first step, that is the first stage, is that of preparation. Preparation stage क्या होती है? In which you are actually trying to understand कि problem है क्या. ठीक है? It is a problem. You analyze the problem. You become aware of the background facts and related information. थोड़ी बहुत आपने उसकी research कर ली. ठीक है? Second is the incubation stage. Incubation stage में ना you sort of get stuck. कि जैसे मैथ्स में इट्स अ वेरी वेरी वैलिड एग्जांपल है. कोई आपने इंटीग्रेशन का प्रॉब्लम देखा, डिफरेंशिएशन का देखा, देने वाला है का ओके नाउ आई एम स्टक इन दिस प्रॉब्लम. ठीक है, आधा हो गया, आधा नहीं हो रहा है, आई जस्ट लेट इट गो. इंक्यूबेशन पीरियड में ना यू मोस्ट लाइकली आर टू गिव अप ऑन दैट प्रॉब्लम फॉर सम टाइम. ठीक है. इल्यूमिनेशन में क्या होता है? आहा, आई फाउंड इट. एंड यूजुअली इल्यूमिनेशन, दैट इज द थर्ड स्टेज दैट टेक्स प्लेस नॉट इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट इन विच यू आर डूइंग द प्रॉब्लम. सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल आपने ना मैथ्स छोड़ के इकोनॉमिक्स पढ़ना शुरू कर दिया, एंड इकोनॉमिक्स में कुछ पढ़ते पढ़ते आपको एकदम से याद आ गया कि मे बी आई कुड यूज दैट नेक्स्ट स्टेप टू सॉल्व दैट मैथमेटिकल प्रॉब्लम. दैट वुड बी द यूरेका मोमेंट, इल्यूमिनेशन. ठीक है. एंड वेरिफिकेशन इज व्हेन यू बेसिकली इवैल्यूएट द वर्थ और अप्रोप्रिएटनेस ऑफ द सॉल्यूशन एंड देन यू टेस्ट इट एंड यू जज इट. ठीक है, एक्चुअल इम्प्लीमेंटेशन. सो नेक्स्ट वी कम टू द नेक्स्ट मेन हेडिंग, विच इज डेवलपिंग क्रिएटिव थिंकिंग. तो हमें ऑब्वियसली वी नो दैट creative thinking is something that we all want to be able to develop and nourish as much as possible. But there are certain barriers to creative thinking. So let's discuss some of those. First of all, inhibiting factors that impede, matlab they suppress creative expression and then make conscious attempts to overcome the same. ठीक है. तो बेसिकली हमें ये फर्स्ट प्रॉब्लम जो है हमारी, वो इनहिबिशन वाली इनहिबिटिंग फैक्टर्स की प्रॉब्लम है. नाउ लेट्स स्टडी दोस फैक्टर्स. The first one is the tendency, habitual learning जो है हमारी वो, हाँ, this is a very very important problem. Habitual learning is necessary for smooth and efficient functioning in daily routine, but the tendency to be overpowered by habits, particularly in one's way of thinking, can be detrimental to creative expression. आपने कभी किसी को बोलते सुना है कि I will not do this thing because this is the way I have always done it. I will not try something new because I haven't ever tried it. So for example, if you tell someone to take a walk, कि चलो, if you are having any kind of mental health problems, आप नीचे जाओ, you put on your earphones and आप अपनी कॉलोनी के you take out 5 or 6 rounds. ठीक है. When you come back home, you most likely feel better. But that person is like, मैंने 20 years में मैंने आज तक ये कभी किया ही नहीं है, so मैं अभी कैसे कर सकता हूँ? So this is habitual, जो आपके मतलब जो आपकी habit बन चुकी है, उसको तोड़ना and trying new things out is the biggest barrier in creative thinking. ठीक है. People are very set in their ways. They don't want to change the way they are doing things. So they always, change is always uncomfortable. So when you tell them to do it, और इतने सालों की उनकी habit बनी हुई होती है, they will not quit something. And it's very hard to make them quit it and make them, try different kinds of solutions. Similarly, जब मैं, for example, अगर मैं किसी को बोल रही हूँ to take, try taking walk or running, and that person is not willing to do it, तो आप ये सोचो, in his own head, how difficult it will be for him to think of a creative solution to a problem, because he's so set in his own ways ना, कि जो habit बन गई है वो बन गई है. So he will not think flexibly. It's very rigid kind of thinking. ठीक है. So this is perceptual. अच्छा, ये वाले जो blocks होते हैं ये perceptual भी हो सकते हैं कि आप perceive नहीं कर पा रहे अपने आप को exactly, जैसे कि वो सोच ही नहीं पाते कि हम नीचे जाएं. आपके व्यू जजमेंट्स भी होते हैं, immediate judgments का relation हो सकता है उनसे कि they are wrong and you are just still functioning on those judgments. Motivational and emotional blocks also interfere with connective thinking. ये हम already discuss कर चुके हैं how motivation can interfere. Cultural barriers हो सकते हैं that are related to excessive adherence to traditions, expectations, conformity, pressures and stereotypes. For example, I think the LGBTQ community faces a lot of cultural barriers from the previous generation that this is not how things have been done in our culture, and they sort of raise those kind of questions on them. But this is one of the barriers to creative thinking as well. So because that is how you grow as a person, that you have to think flexibly. You should not let any of these barriers come into play. अच्छा, इसमें बहुत सारी स्ट्रैटेजीज हैं टू बिकम अ क्रिएटिव थिंकर. लेट्स डिस्कस देम ऑल इन अ बिट ब्रीफ, क्योंकि बहुत सारी हैं. Become more aware and sensitive and be able to notice and respond to feelings, sights, sounds, textures around you. Become more conscious of where you are. ठीक है. Generate as many ideas, responses, solutions or suggestions on a given task. ऐसा नहीं कि अगर किसी का एक solution मिल गया तो बस ठीक है, अब बाकी का मैं सोचूंगा ही नहीं. Think about alternate solutions also. ठीक है. Even in maths, you know, I know some people जिनको अगर आप एक mathematical problem भी दोगे ना, वो उसके भी 3 methods से solution निकाल देंगे. So it's not that कि आप उसमें भी creative नहीं हो सकते, उसमें भी method से creative हो सकते हो. ठीक है. ब्रेनस्टॉर्मिंग इज अ वेरी गुड आइडिया. जैसे ना पीएचडी में व्हेन यू वांट टू सीक एडमिशन दे ऑलवेज आस्क यू फॉर अ प्रपोजल. अब प्रपोजल जो है ना वो आपका प्रॉपरली इम्प्लीमेंटेबल और वो नहीं होना चाहिए एप्लीकेबल, की एक एक उसकी इंटीग्रिटी में नहीं जाते वो. दे जस्ट वांट टू नो वेदर यू हैव द विजन टू बी क्रिएटिव और नॉट, वेदर यू हैव अ विजन टू डू अ स्टडी और नॉट. ठीक है. सो ब्रेनस्टॉर्मिंग क्या होता है? थ्रोइंग आइडियाज, वॉट एवर इज कमिंग इनटू योर हेड विदाउट एनी फियर ऑफ जजमेंट, यू थ्रो इट आउट एंड यू सी की व्हाट ऑल इज देयर. Originality, as we already discussed, कि अपने अपने खुद के ideas से you want to be able to think. ठीक है. Engage yourself in more frequently in activities which require the use of imagination and original thinking. For example, creative arts, जो आपकी performing arts, all these are examples. Theater है या फिर you know singing, dancing, painting, sports even is very creative. ठीक है. Never accept the first idea, as I said before. Get feedback on your solutions. Don't live in a box. Try not to think of what solution someone else may offer to your problems. अपने आप ही सोचो कि क्या करूं मैं इस प्रॉब्लम का. ठीक है. Give your ideas the chance to incubate. थोड़े से टाइम के लिए छोड़ना भी important है. Then sometimes ideas cluster like branches in a tree. So आप उसको flow chart and diagram के थ्रू भी कर सकते हो draw. ठीक है. Resist the temptation for immediate reward and success. Very hard, but you should do it. Develop independent thinking in making judgments. Independently you should be judgment आपको बनाना चाहिए, figuring things out without any help or resources, and this sometimes includes your parents. So if your parents are saying something about a particular political ideology या any kind of कि आप ये कर लो वो कर लो, उनकी भी बात सुनो, लेकिन you should always have the capacity to think on your own कि fine then dad is saying this, mom is saying this, but what is my own opinion about it. ठीक है. Don't fight with them, but always have an opinion. Be aware of your own defenses concerning the problem. When we feel threatened by a problem, we are less likely to think of creative ideas. Obviously, don't feel threatened. Just think of it as a problem only. It's not who you are. Last but not the least, be self-confident and positive and never undermine your creative potential. That's great. Then we come to the last major topic of the chapter, which is thought and language. Acha. The debate between thought and language is that कौन पहले आया, the chicken and egg kind of scenario here. That some people say, one school says that language is actually a determinant of thought, and the other one says that thought is actually a determinant of language. So some people, जैसे I'll tell you, जैसे हमारे Benjamin Lee Worf, he was of the view that language determines the contents of thoughts, and this view came to be known as the linguistic relativity hypothesis. ठीक है. Linguistic relativity hypothesis. In its strong version, the hypothesis holds what and how individuals can possibly think is determined by their language. मतलब whatever is coming into my brain now, whatever I'm talking to you on this video is a result of the language English or Hindi, or because I use both. तो this view came to be known as linguistic determinism. मतलब linguistic ability से आपके thoughts determine होते हैं. Linguistic determinism. ठीक है. Although it's a good idea. I mean it's a good thought, but obviously it's not. I mean I don't think, in my opinion, that it's a very scientifically valid principle. तो ऑब्वियसली इनको किसने चैलेंज किया? जीन पियाजे. जीन पियाजे इज द वन वी लर्नड इन चैप्टर नंबर 4, जो हमारे ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट की जिन्होंने स्टेजेस दी थी ना, वो प्री ऑपरेशनल वाली, सेंसरी ऑपरेशनल वो वाली स्टेजेस. सो ही सेड दैट अगर ऐसा होता तो बेबीज जो होते ना वो तो थिंकिंग ही नहीं कर पाते जब तक उनकी लैंग्वेज डेवलप नहीं हो जाती. वी नो दैट चिल्ड्रन आर अनेबल टू डेवलप प्रॉपर सिंटैक्स एंड लैंग्वेज, आई थिंक until they're 6 or 7 minimum, 5, 6, 7 तो मिनिमम एज है जिसमें आपकी प्रॉपर सिंटैक्स और लैंग्वेज आती है. तो अगर ऐसा होता तो बेबीज तो थॉट ही नहीं कर पाते, बट वी नो दैट बेबीज थिंक. वो अपना सोशल वर्ल्ड एक्सप्लेन करते हैं एंड they explore different kind of objects, they make different kinds of sounds also, but just because there is a lack of language doesn't mean that there is no thought going on in their head. ठीक है. So this is what the bit of a debate is all about. कि कौन पहले आया, whether language is determining thought or thought is determining language. Now, Vygotsky is a Russian psychologist, argued that thoughts and language develop in a child separately until about 2 years of age, which, when after which they merge. Before 2 years, thought is pre-verbal and is experienced more in action. Now, that is a very logical argument. The child's utterances are more automatic reflexes, for example, like crying when they are uncomfortable. So, after 2 years of age, their thought and their language is combined. उससे पहले जो हमारा thought होता है, instead of going into language, it is more reflected through actions. For example, if a baby is thinking about a toy, he will grab it. ठीक है? So this is a very good integration of both these theories. Next, we come to the next main heading, which is development and use of language. ठीक है? Development of language and the use of language. So इसमें क्या है इस section में that first of all we define language. Language consists of a system of symbols organized by means of certain rules that we use to communicate with each other. तो इसके 3 characteristics हो गए. The first one is that of symbols. So for example, अगर हम home बोल रहे हैं, home you know is a place where you stay, where there is a bed, where you can sleep, all these characteristics of a home. ठीक है? तो second में क्या है? It is made of rules. तो जैसे कि I am going to the school. You won't say school am I going to. ऐसे नहीं बोलोगे ना. It is combined together using a certain kind of rule कि I पहले आएगा फिर am आएगा. ठीक है? The third characteristic of language is communication of one's thoughts, ideas, and intentions and feelings to others. That is the use of language. इसीलिए जब भी किसी भी language को एक, for example, a lot of people might think that English is actually a superior language than Hindi, but it's actually not true, because for every language, the main motive is to communicate your feelings to others. ठीक है? So whether you're doing it in Hindi or you're doing it in English or doing it in French or German, doesn't matter, as long as your feelings, thoughts are correctly being conveyed to the other person. ठीक है? Sign language is also very great. That is also just as equally good as Hindi, English, German, whatever you think. ठीक है? Development of language पे आ जाते हैं. So in humans it is a bit of a complex process when language develops. ठीक है? First of all, you see that there is a great deal of regularity with which children all over the world seem to be learning the language around them, and it's also a very predictable pattern. ठीक है? Predictable pattern मतलब you can predict कि अब अगर इसने 2 शब्द, he has learned 2 words, then he'll next time learn 3, 4 or a whole sentence. ठीक है? So the first sound produced by babies is crying. It is undifferentiated. आपको पता नहीं चलता. Although sometimes mothers are able to recognize कि ये खाने वाला रो रहा है बच्चा, या ये he's irritated, that's why he's crying, but you can't really make out. The next stage is babbling, where he's like da, a, ba, single syllable words use होते हैं. ठीक है? And it is also characterized by echolalia, which is basically a pattern of repetition. Da, 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 pa, pa, pa. This is all echolalia examples. Then the next stage is the one word stage, जिसमें वो एक word बोल पाते हैं. So like mom or dad, not dad, da. Okay. So then when we come 18 to 20 years, 20 months, then it is a 2 word stage. They can put 2 words together. Ma, dad. ठीक है? That kind of thing. This exemplifies telegraphic speech. Telegraphic speech होती है ना कि जो main words हैं वो बच्चे बोल देते हैं, but they don't know the rules of grammar by that point. ठीक है? So, and then obviously as they grow up, they learn the rules of syntax, rule of grammar, and then they are able to form proper sentences and talk. Skinner believed, again इसमें भी 2 schools of thoughts आ जाते हैं. Skinner believed कि जैसे कि we animals learn to pick keys. जैसे हमने वो rat वाला experiment पढ़ा था ना chapter number 6 में, कि उसने लीवर प्रेस किया तो फूड पैलेट गिर गया. सो दिस काइंड ऑफ प्रोसेस टेक्स प्लेस व्हेन वी लर्न लैंग्वेज. ठीक है? तो मतलब जो अगर किसी चाइल्ड ने बॉटल बोला एंड पेरेंट्स रिएक्ट पॉजिटिवली, देन दैट चाइल्ड इज मोर लाइकली टू यूज दैट वर्ड और नॉट. ठीक है? बट इससे बहुत सारी चीजें एक्सप्लेन नहीं होती हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, हार्डली कभी किसी ने इतना रीइंफोर्स किया होगा अपने बच्चे को कि इज बोलो, एम बोलो, आई गिव यू अ टॉफी व्हेन यू से इज, एंड आई एम श्योर दैट डिडंट हैपन विद यू एंड योर पेरेंट्स व्हेन यू वर ग्रोइंग अप. So there was this person called Noam Chomsky which challenged this, and he said that some part of language is innate. Innate means biologically हमारे अंदर होती है, and words and grammar जो होते हैं, they basically the rate at which children acquire words and grammar without being taught cannot be explained by learning principles. मतलब reinforcement वाले principles से वो explain नहीं हो सकता. Children can create all sorts of sentences they have never heard, therefore could not be imitating. तो social learning से भी you are not. वो अपने आप भी बहुत सारे वर्ड्स बना लेते हैं बच्चे, नाम भी तो बना लेते हैं बच्चे, that this toy is called this toy is called that. अपना चलता रहता है उनका. ठीक है? क्रिटिकल पीरियड बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है. क्रिटिकल पीरियड मतलब कि अगर एक सर्टन एज ग्रुप में उनको लैंग्वेज के प्रिंसिपल्स और लैंग्वेज से एक्सपोज नहीं किया गया, देन इट विल बी वेरी डिफिकल्ट और परहैप्स इम्पॉसिबल फॉर देम टू लर्न लैंग्वेज लेटर ऑन. इसमें देयर इज एन एग्जांपल ऑफ जीनी. इट्स नॉट गिवन हियर बट आई हैव रेड इट इन माय ग्रेजुएशन. जीनी में क्या था, इट इज देयर वाज बेसिकली अ गर्ल हु वाज लॉक्ड अप इन द बेसमेंट फॉर अ वेरी लॉन्ग टाइम, आई थिंक अंटिल शी वाज 10 years old. ठीक है. एंड व्हेन शी केम आउट शी हैड नो आइडिया अबाउट लैंग्वेजेस, बोलते कैसे हैं. बेसिकली जो बेबी के कॉग्निटिव वो होते हैं, लैंग्वेज कैपेसिटीज होती हैं, उसमें उतनी ही थी. So, of course, a lot of experiments and a lot of case studies were done on her, and it was found that it was actually very hard for Jeannie to learn the language, the rules of language, and even when she grew up to be around 60 years old, अब तो शायद वो 60 years की हैं, अभी भी उनकी properly language develop नहीं हो पाई है. Because 3 to 4 years की एज में, if you don't expose a child to language, to writing, to principles, then it's very hard for them. It is a critical period. Critical है वो period. ठीक है. अगर वो period नहीं मिला, it will be very hard for them to learn. So again, the next subtopic, language use. Knowledge of vocabulary, syntax of a language does ensure proper use of language to achieve the purpose of communication in a variety of social situations, जो जीनी के साथ नहीं हो पाया था. ठीक है. When children are engaged in conversations, they also have difficulty taking turns in speaking and listening like adults. So थोड़ा attention का problem होता है, but that's all good. That can be solved. But language is very important to be exposed into a critical period. Here we end this chapter, and I hope you understood all the concepts I explained. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment box and I will answer them. Do subscribe to the channel, and thank you for listening to me.